minutes after 9 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. This is the date we wanted to remember the events of 12 years ago, the importance of that day, the sacrifices of that day. And we've been doing this, Robin, for 11 years now, remembering. And never have I invited somebody who I'm more nervous about talking to than Jimmy McCauley. Fire Chief James McCauley, Commissioner James McCauley. He's a friend from childhood. He went on to do wonderful things with his life and has become a role model, I think, for everybody else who ever grew up with him. Maybe he doesn't realize that or not, but he certainly is representing the bravest in this country. I love that, the America's bravest. I love that saying. For the rest, if he doesn't mind, I'll be calling him Jimmy. I have a hard time calling him anything other than Jimmy. Jimmy McCauley up in New York. 1 year, he was telling me the other day that 12 years ago, in one day, he started a 24-hour shift. And he lives about 27 miles away from where he worked in New York City. He worked with the New York Board of Fire Underwriters. He's going to correct anything I have wrong here. He was doing that, I think, 30 years or so. He'll correct anything I've got wrong here. And he went home after a 24-hour shift. By the way, he was a volunteer firefighter in the town we grew up in, North Merrick. He was the fire chief of there. He was the commissioner of the North Merrick Fire Department. Might still be, I'm not really sure. And also worked in New York City. He was telling me that home base for him was in Greenwich Village, which for those who know the city know that's not far at all from Lower Manhattan where the World Trade Center buildings were. And he'll tell you in the course of this interview, he also had a nephew who responded. He's got so many stories, so let's not make him wait any longer. And I'll be formal, and then I'll be informal. Good morning.
Good morning, Larry.
Commissioner James McCauley.
Jimmy's fine.
I know, Jimmy. Good morning. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
I know I kind of threw you a curve. You recently had some hip surgery, so I hope you're doing okay.
Yeah, the recovery's coming along well, though.
Got a lot of people from your past that were writing me email and sending Facebook messages saying, when is Jimmy coming on? So if they're listening on the live broadcast, they're welcome to call in during this interview. Everybody is, as a matter of fact. And if you're watching it on the video, then you'll be able to see a little slideshow. Hopefully that'll come across with some photographs that Jimmy said I could use from his Facebook page. So kind of remember for us, Jimmy, if you could, right about this time where you woken up. Your nephew is Brian. Let's start with him. Brian is no longer with us, right?
No, Brian unfortunately passed away from cancer that he got from his efforts on 9/11.
Where did Brian work?
Brian worked in Fire Patrol number 2, the same house that I worked in. That was in 84 West 3rd Street. Okay. In the heart of Greenwich Village.
So he was on duty when the first plane hit?
No, he wasn't. He was home here on Long Island. He was on his day off.
Oh, okay.
Okay, he went in after the first plane hit. Well, really after the second plane hit, because it was only 15 or so minutes between the two planes. But, yeah, he was. I just got off from the 24-hour shift the day before, and he called me and say, Uncle Jimmy, did you see what happened? And I'm like, Brian, I just fell asleep. I don't know. He goes, turn the television on. And I had seen they were replaying.
Oh, my God.
The second plane hitting the towers. And I was like, oh, my God, what the, No one knew what it was. But then when, obviously, 2 planes, and we knew that it was something with terrorism.
Right.
So he was talking about, what do you think we have to do? Both of us called our firehouse. They were asking us to come in. And at that time, I also got a call from my volunteer firehouse that they were starting to assemble units to get ready to go into New York City. So I was kind of torn between 2 jobs, my paid job and my job as a volunteer fire chief.
Yeah, right.
So that was the start of my day.
So you went in. You could do both jobs at once. I'm assuming, or am I wrong about that?
Yeah, you could. But what happened was the chaos that was on the island was a little bit we already had units, the fire patrol was already on scene, so there were many guys already there. So I felt to try to organize the North America end of it was more important. My nephew got in his own personal vehicle. He started to head in. By late that morning, Nassau County was being asked for different types of... First, they were asking for ambulances because they thought there were going to be a tremendous amount of victims,
right?
With injuries and stuff. So we first were sending ambulances in, and then later we sent in pumpers and heavy rescue trucks. So we not only had to organize our own men out here because we were sending them into the city, but we also had to, still protect the citizens of North America too. So
when you were aware of what had happened as a professional firefighter, what thought comes to mind about that type of a fire? I've never really understood how firefighters fight a fire so many stories up in a building.
Well, the biggest thing is, you have to pace yourself as far as the men that were going into the building because of you can't use the elevators. You have to use the stairways in the building. And it's a situation of where you have to bring not only hoses to fight the fire, but you have to bring extra SCBA bottles, for breathing before you finally get to the fire floor.
My goodness.
So it's a very demanding and tasking task.
The number of casualties from the second tower, I don't have the number in front of me, but it's considerably less than the first tower that was hit. Is that because they evacuated the south tower, or at least partially evacuated it because of the first tower being hit, or were they told to stay in the south tower?
Larry, there's been conflicting reports through the years about that. Some people I've read stories where they were told, that they're what they call fire wardens. Some told them to stay right where they were. Some were told to evacuate. So it was probably a situation of where I don't want to say people did what they felt they had to do, but it was, it was.
Right.
It probably wasn't as organized as they wanted it to be.
The collateral damage that we probably don't even know about, when you look at the plane crashing into the building and you see all of that debris flying, it must have gone for blocks. And was one story I read, I never even heard this story before. Yesterday was the first time I read that there was a firefighter who died because of somebody hitting him after he jumped out of the building. So that person not only killed himself, but killed a firefighter. I had never heard that before.
Yes, that's very true. There were a lot of people that were jumping out of the building, and that just gives you an idea of how horrific it must have been up in the upper floors where someone had to make a choice of either, staying there and burning to death or jumping 100 and some odd floors.
My goodness. So on September 11th, you spent your day resting because you had just been on a 24-hour shift, right?
Yeah, I just got off that morning, and then once I knew of this, I spent the rest of the day in the firehouse in North Merrick, organizing things from there.
Okay.
Did you have a specific route that your fire trucks were going to take into the city? Because we had seen video of people literally walking across the bridges, exiting. How did you get your trucks in there?
Well, what happened was we started staging them out here. They were using Shea Stadium's, Shea Stadium, which no longer is, Shea Stadium's parking lot.
Oh.
And we started staging vehicles there, and then they were being brought into because at that time they had closed all the bridges and tunnels. The police department started bringing in trucks, as asked for, into the city.
So when did you finally get into the city, and tell us what it was like for you the first time you actually could see it for yourself?
The first time I got in was the very next day. Our tours usually begin at 8 in the morning, but as I was an officer, so we try to get in a little earlier, so I was in at 6 o'clock that morning. At 8:30, we had gathered because my job had lost one man and we were still looking for him. We gathered a cruise together, and we went down to what, soon became known as the pile. Larry, to try to give it a description is so hard. I mean, I saw something that, as far as the height of the debris and the the fires were still going on at this point.
What was still going on?
The fires from the towers were still going on.
Right.
It was just amazing how it was almost, I would say, trying to remember back, between 10 and 12 stories of rubble.
Oh, my God. I mean, so you don't get that feeling when you look at the pictures. 12 stories.
No, you don't.
For the listeners in Ocala, there is not a building in Ocala that tall, by the way. Well, I think the tallest building in Ocala is the Hilton, right? 9 stories?
Yes.
So the pile of rubble, taller than the tallest building in this city.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's amazing. It was, truly, horrific. And it was, again, things weren't as organized as they were to become. My squad reported to the command post. We were given a job. And basically that's when the digging, for us, started that morning.
Were you able to find your man?
Unfortunately, it took over 3 months. We found him on Christmas Eve, believe it or not.
Oh.
What did you find? Is it too gruesome to say? I mean, did you actually find his body, or?
Yes, his body was, he was whole and, obviously some decomposure.
Right.
But, he was.
My goodness. And
yeah.
The firefighters like Brian, your nephew, are there the ones who died after the fact, the ones who died from the exposure to the chemicals, are they memorialized at the memorial site?
No, they're not. Well, my nephew isn't. I know there's ongoing, the FDNY is adding different members. Their original, everyone knows it's the number as 343. They are adding certain members who I guess they're trying to prove that their cancer or their,
right.
whatever illness they've contacted afterward has been contributed to 9/11.
Jimmy,
but no.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's it.
Yesterday or so, you put a new picture on your Facebook page. It's a plaque commemorating another firefighter. Who is that? Tell us that story.
That's the man we lost.
That's the man you lost?
Yeah, Keith Roma.
Okay.
The firehouse that the job unfortunately closed in 2006, Larry, basically due to 9/11, because it was a 100-man force, and not only my nephew but other members of the force have contacted cancer through the efforts on 9/11, and the insurance industry decided, I guess, better to not go through this again or whatever.
Oh.
So they closed the job down in 2006.
Really? Oh,
now
there's no sense in that.
Yeah, well, that's insurance companies for you. That plaque is still on that building. It's owned now by Anderson Cooper, the reporter from CNN.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's now where he lives. He's renovated it and everything. And as a matter of fact, I believe just last month, New York City gave the building historical status. So he, to his credit, has kept the whole front of the building as it was, and on it is that plaque honoring Keith Roma.
My goodness.
Oh.
And is the plaque relatively new?
No, the plaque is from a dedication ceremony we held 1 year, 2012, September 11th. We put it on.
You were having a hard time describing what it was like. Just telling us that it was 12 stories tall is enough of us to get maybe a better picture than what any photographs have ever allowed us to see. Was there something about that day that is embedded in you, like the smell, the heat? Is there anything about that you'll just never forget? Well, that's kind of a dumb question, but you know what I mean? Some of the other residual, like can you walk past a fire and smell something and say, "Oh my gosh, that reminds me of September 11th"?
No, I got to be honest with you. The smell down there is something that I never smelled before in the fire service and haven't smelled since.
Wow.
It was, it really is hard to explain. It was something that everyone I know who had probably been down there and has lived through it can understand what I'm saying. But, it was, that's it. I really can't say anything.
Do you know, just for the listeners' sake, I go back a long way with Jimmy. We were kids together, and we rode bicycles to school together. We walked home from school together. I remember, Jimmy, if you don't mind me saying, I remember the day your father passed away. I remember walking home with you and remembering that day. We were just young kids. I put a picture right now as we're talking about on the video we're doing. So there's Jimmy, second from the right, in the back row with a red sweater, and I'm the big goofy guy that looks like Conan O'Brien. But one of the things I was thinking about as we were preparing for this show is that when we were kids, your brother Terry is considerably older than you, considerably older than us, and he already was married and had children of his own. And I remember you being called Uncle Jimmy. And I remember thinking, how cool is that? I mean, we're just kids and he's already Uncle Jimmy. And it occurred to me that one of those young little children calling you Uncle Jimmy was your nephew, Brian.
Brian. Yeah.
So...
were you Brian's inspiration to become a firefighter, or do you have a history of that?
Well, my brother was a volunteer. He's also an ex-chief out here at the North Merritt Fire Department.
Oh.
I believe both between myself and my brother, we were both inspirations for Brian to get involved. I got Brian on my job. I got him to take the test and, sort of represented for him to get on the job that we were on together. And we had worked together. Brian, I had spent 27 years on it. Brian was on, I believe, 13 or 14. I'm not really sure about that. But we spent the last 4 years together as I was Brian's boss. So not only were we really, spent time off duty, but we spent a lot of time together on duty. So.
And when a person does the kind of career that you have chosen, it doesn't just affect you and your men, but it also affects the spouses and the children. How do they deal with that emotion when a tragedy like this happens, knowing that you're going into the throes of danger?
Well, it's funny you mention that because early this morning, both of my sons, we got up to have breakfast. And we would talk. I was talking to them, and they were, we were discussing about 12 years ago. My youngest son, obviously not as much. He's 21 now. But my oldest son, who's 23, was telling me the story about he knew I had gone to work, the day before.
Right.
And he had left for school before I got home. So he didn't know if I was still in the city in it.
Oh, wow.
And he had just started middle school, and they were some of the parents were coming and picking up their children, and he was wondering if I was going to end up being there to pick him up or whatever. He said it was one of the things he was worried about.
Oh my God.
So he ended up calling my wife, who she works at Winthrop Hospital here on the island. And I got a hold of her, and she said if it's possible, could I, touch base with him at his middle school? And I immediately went over there to, to assure him that, Dad was okay and all right.
Wow.
That was one of my, lasting memories of that day too, because I saw the relief in, a child's face.
Oh my God!
He thought that maybe something, he was thinking something bad, and something bad didn't happen.
Thank goodness, right? And but it happened in a residual way to Brian. When after the event, so did Brian share stories with you? Did you talk afterwards? Did he see things that that you recall that were like unbelievable, or was it just such a mess that it was hard to make sense out of any of it?
Well, basically, yeah, it was hard to make sense out of it. But, Brian, it was funny because I don't want to say he blamed himself or said anything. One of the jobs, when Brian got in there, one of our officers wanted some of our trucks moved because it was still chaos going on. They didn't know how many other buildings were going to fall in the area.
Right.
And he went in on VV Street to move one of the trucks from the fire patrol, and when he started it up, because this is after, the two plumes of dust, smoke, and God knows whatever else was in the air, that covered the truck. When he started the truck up, the vent system was on, and he got a full blast of all this.
God.
Which is some of the time, that's where we think maybe this was the onset of the start of how the cancer got into him. Because he was he got out of the truck fully white from the smoke and everything. So.
My goodness. How far away was the truck from the World Trade Center?
Well, Easy Street, it's, 2 or 3 blocks?
Okay.
I believe it is.
Yeah, that plume of smoke that we see wasn't just smoke. It was dust. It was powder. It was everything. I mean, it must have been horrendous. I can't imagine what it was like. I've seen videos, but it's never the same as being there.
Some of my friends who worked that day who would tell me the story about running down the West Side Highway or running up Broadway or running in different areas, and some drove underneath cars. Into doorways. It was basically all of them thought that was going to be the end, that this was, how their lives were going to end. Right. So.
The disease that took Brian, if I could just stick with him a little bit, did he get sick right away?
No, not really. Brian had always had a back problem, Larry, and he kept complaining that he went for treatments, he went to chiropractors and everything. And this one doctor that he had gone to, he kept complaining that everything they did for him wasn't, relieving the pain, and it was only minimal relief at best and everything. So finally he got so fed up he changed doctors, and now this went on for almost 2 years after 9/11. I would say no. What am I saying? It's almost 5 years after 9/11.
Oh, wow.
Of his constantly, dealing with having cortisone shots and things like that. Eventually, when he changed doctors, and they, I believe it was in 2006, they did a full. Don't ask me why they hadn't done this before. They found a football-sized tumor on the base of his spine.
Oh my God.
And eventually he was operated on, in 2006 with that. They took the tumor out. He was in Sloan Kettering Hospital here in New York, and the doctors, they could not believe that he was walking around as much as he was and basically living with that tumor in him.
And he passed away in 2010?
Yes.
I did get a photograph, I think it was from Newsday, of the funeral procession with the American flag flying and the cars going underneath it. The shot I'm describing, do you know that? Are you familiar with the photograph?
Yeah, I believe so.
Where was that? Is that in Merrick?
That's on Merrick Avenue.
That's one of the things that people like yourself, sir, have to be commended for, because when you go into places like that and the way you live your life, you just keep moving, you just keep being physical and being active, and your body really doesn't give the bad things to happen to affect you in a negative way.
Yeah.
Right.
We're speaking to a good friend. I haven't spoken to him since I was a teenager. I moved out of Long Island and moved to Florida with my family when I was 17, and I think I went back a couple times before I was 20, and that was the last time I saw Jimmy. And in all these years that we've been remembering September 11th, 2001, doing these specials, it never occurred to me. Never occurred to me, because he was in North America, never occurred to me he was part of the rescue, part of the cleanup, part of the search, dedicated his life to doing that, not just at 9/11, but for 40 years or something like that. Mm-hmm. We need to take a little break. James McCauley is our guest. My friend Jimmy McCauley. We rode bicycles together, Robin. Hard to believe.
And flip baseball cards.
Flip baseball, yes. No, I had a monkey's card. He had baseball cards. All right, we'll take a little break. We'll be right back, and Jimmy's going to stay with us for another half hour. And I do invite the callers, if you would like to call, if you're out of the area, it's a it's 352. I don't know what that was. 352-622-9622. If you want to speak to Jimmy, Commissioner James McCauley.
Yes.
352-622-9622. We'll take a little break and be right back.
It was incredible. A construction worker, Frank Salecchia, was walking through trying to get a firefighter who remains out of the pit, and he walked over a small hill and began to walk down, and he looked up and he saw this large 20-foot cross standing there, standing straight up in this pile of debris, and nobody knows how it happened. It was almost in like a gully, and he came out of building number 1, which is the north tower, towards building 6, and he just looked up, and there it was, as if God had placed it there for him to find, to bring other people to this cross and say, look, there's hope. Okay, I'm here with you. I didn't allow this to happen. I gave men free will, and they've done this, but now I'm here with you. And I got to tell you something. I don't know of a single rescue recovery worker who did not stop by that cross at some point in time in those first few days and say a prayer. And it became a symbol to us, and that is the only piece of steel, the only symbol that still remains at the World Trade Center. Remember how it was when we were all together as a nation. Remember when people were shaking each other's hands, where there were flags on the porches and on the cars, and we felt as one, and we moved forward, and I think that's important.
Gargantuan explosion! Oh my God, I don't believe it! The northeast corner has exploded in the most incredible explosion. Flames are flying out of the building. They're 5-10 stories high now. Black billowing smoke. The building corner, the whole entire corner is gone.
Both World Trade Center buildings in New York City right now, heaps of rubble. At 9 o'clock this morning, a plane crashed into one of the towers of the World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan.
I heard the noise. I was in my office, and I heard the guy screaming. So I ran out, and everybody was saying, oh my God, and they're in tears, they're crying. Everybody's upset.
I was just trying to make phone calls. I looked up, and I heard an explosion, and then I saw everybody in the street react first. People crying, people on the ground, everybody lying down. And then I looked up, and I saw this huge plume of smoke, and the tower just crumbling, and it just turned into a huge plume of smoke. And next thing you know, there's smoke in one tower.
Shortly after 9 o'clock,
those are the sounds from September 11th, 2001. We're remembering that day 12 years later, and on the phone is Commissioner Fire Chief James McCauley up in North Merrick, New York, which is the town I grew up in. Jimmy was a friend of mine when we were children, and went on to do great things with his life, with the fire department, with fire service, and he's remembering that day. He responded the next day because he had just gotten home. I'm guessing, Jimmy, you still there?
Yeah.
I hope. there you are. Or before the break, we were talking a little bit about Brian. Just to wrap the discussion about Brian, he had a street named after him. Is that right?
Yes. Yes, we had a street dedication for Brian.
Well, that's awesome. And I know that because I found photographs online of that event. When was that? Was that 2 years ago, or was that more recently?
2 years. It was on his birthday, July of 2010.
Oh, wow. When did you become commissioner?
I became commissioner December 2 years ago.
2 years ago. And
I'm in the middle of serving a 5-year term.
Okay, so you're still commissioner?
Yeah, still am.
All right, that's awesome.
Yeah, there's 5 of us, and we're elected by the residents of North America.
And everybody in North America knows Jimmy McCauley.
I wouldn't say everyone.
You were working alongside these gentlemen, and then you were elected as commissioner. How did that rank change the protocol with you and the men underneath you then?
As far as commissioner?
Yes, sir.
Well, here on the island, like I say, almost all the fire departments on the island are volunteer. So what happens is, basically, I wear many hats. I still respond to calls, still go, ride the trucks and help people. But 2 nights a week, we have our commissioners' meetings where we actually handle the administrative, the financial end of running the North American Fire Department.
Jimmy, have you been to the memorial at the World Trade Center site?
Yes. Matter of fact, I ran a trip for the fire department, for my fire department here. We had got a busload of guys, and we went in last summer. And it's very, very, very moving.
Robin is going to be there in about, 2 weeks?
Yeah.
Robin's going up in about 2 weeks. So
it really is. She'll enjoy it. I mean, it's very simple, but it's simple and moving at the same time. I'm looking forward to I understand that hopefully in the spring of 14 that the museum will finally be opened.
The pictures that the news media are showing, they are really phenomenal. They're allowing us to see step by step the completion of everything that's going in there, and we're so glad the cross is in there.
Yes.
Yeah, the cross was something. We actually saw the cross, and being a sports guy, maybe you can explain the 2 baseballs. Before we
baseballs?
You don't know about him? I'll tell you about him in a second. Okay, well I'll tell you when we saw the cross, there were 2 baseballs stuck in it, like really high at where the cross beams meet. Right now, I want to take just a moment. We have a tolling of the bells. We've got the 3 bells that will be ringing right now because the Flight 77 crashed into the Pentagon at 9:38 on the morning of September the 11th, 2001, and it is 9:38 right now. So let's just take one moment. We'll be back with James McCauley, my good friend Jimmy, in just a bit. This is WOCA The Source. Let's continue our conversation. The phone lines are open. Actually, I have a phone call. Somebody's waiting to speak to you, Jimmy. The phone number, if you'd like to be on the air, is the WOCA Climate Control Source Hotline, 622-9622 if you're in the area. If you're out of the area, use the area code 352. So it's 352-622-9622. Jimmy, you have a caller. Good morning. You're on the air with Jimmy McCauley.
Yes. Good morning, Mr. Jimmy.
Yes.
How many fire trucks were lost during the total event?
Oh, geez, I really don't know the actual numbers.
It was quite a few, right?
Yeah, I believe between 10 and 20, I would guess.
Wow. Well, my brother-in-law works for Seagrave's fire truck company up in Clintonville, Wisconsin, and the men up there worked several weeks overtime, almost 24 hours a day, and they finally completed a fire truck, and they gifted it to the New York Fire Department back in 9/11 time.
Oh, really? That is very nice of them.
Yeah, it was on the national news at that time when the truck was delivered to the department. But I believe your fire department, a lot of them in the country, purchase fire equipment from the Seagrave company in Clintonville, Wisconsin. It's very well known for having top-notch, first-class quality equipment. But they worked many hours and got a truck together and sent it out. And it was on national news when it was delivered. But it was a gift from that company.
Right.
Okay, thank you for what you do, and good luck in the future.
Thank you. We actually have, Jimmy, we actually have a piece of the steel beam at one of the firehouses here in Ocala. I think it was a gift because of the fact that I guess some of these guys responded too. It's amazing how far away the firefighters traveled to try to help out. It was one of those, I don't know that has ever happened before.
Mm-mm.
Yeah, that is. Hello?
Yeah, we're still here. We just had an awkward moment right there, I guess. The events that happened when you went there, and were you actually involved? How do you begin to clean up a thing like that? I mean, what do you do? How do you search? Did you have dogs? Did you have some kind of special equipment?
Yeah, there were rescue dogs there. But basically, the very beginning, we were using spackle buckets and passing things down in a bucket brigade, so to speak.
My goodness, one bucket at a time. Do you buy into any of the conspiracy theories that you hear?
No.
See, all the firefighters agree.
Yeah.
At the government put bombs in the buildings and things like that? No.
Yeah. See, all the firefighters we've spoken to have that immediately. They say no, they don't believe any of that stuff.
When people came to help, was there like a check-in kind of a station so people would know what kind of skills the people that were asking to help had, or did they just show up and jump right in?
Well, to be honest with you, Robin, not until usually the first day, from what I understood, it was very disorganized. There were a lot of people down that site. But later on that night, with the deployment of the National Guard and the New York City Police Department, a perimeter then was set up, and it started where they, you had to have some identification as to who you were with. You just couldn't walk into the area,
The day
and that security became tighter as the time went on.
Oh, really? The day of the attacks. Here's my little story. The listeners already heard me say this morning, but this is for Jimmy's sake. I was an activities director at an assisted living facility here in Ocala because I was sick of radio for a while. so I took a break from radio. And I was actually the boss of one. I had one guy under me, and he happened to have been a retired New York City firefighter named Frank Celestino. Older than me, so it was weird to be the boss of somebody older than me. We're standing at the TV watching all of this unfold. And, of course, he knows more about what's going on from your perspective, from the firefighter perspective, than I will ever know. And he says, what the hell is going on? Because he sees, I guess, what looked like the beginning of the South Tower falling. And then I realized, wow, that's something different happening, because I didn't realize right away that it was falling. All of a sudden it occurred to me, Jimmy, that Frank had a son working in the fire department also. He had, in fact, had his helmet number. I guess they held on to it just in case he had ever signed up, and he did, and he had the same helmet number. And he was so respectful of the position that he had with me that he didn't even leave to go call. And all of a sudden I remembered that he had a son in the fire department. I said, Frank, you don't got to ask permission. Just go call. You got to call Lewis. Fortunately, Lewis had the day off. Was out on the island somewhere. I think he was like out in the Hamptons or something. All you firefighters get so much money, you can go to the Hamptons.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So anyway, so he was out there somewhere, and then by the time he got in, the two towers had fallen. So, and in fact, we did an interview with him one year, and he was working, and the fire alarm went off that September 11th too, and he actually took his phone onto the truck, and you could hear kind of what was going on. But when we had that conversation, it occurred to me that the people who were running away from all of this were passing you guys running in.
Right.
I mean, there's no way that we can, as everyday people, let you know how much we appreciate what you do. And if anything has ever illustrated for us the contribution that our first responders, firefighters in particular, give to us, it was that day.
It is. It was, there's a famous picture of some of the people, I guess, coming down the staircase, and one of the towers took of some of the firemen, passing them.
Right. Yeah, that is, and in fact, I think that young man is still alive. That one firefighter. Yeah. I remember hearing that he had passed Or that he died? I don't know if "passed" is the right word when you...
Did you or was there anyone in your group of men that experienced some kind of visions or spiritualness on that day, as to if you found somebody that, how could they possibly have survived any of that happen to you?
Well, to be honest with you, the officer that was with the man that we lost, Keith Roma, they were standing side by side. But the impact of the building coming down and the, I don't know what you want to call it, the rush of air or whatever, literally blew the two men apart. And one survived and the other didn't.
Oh.
Oh, wow.
That gives me chills.
Oh, wow. Yeah, there's a story of a man who was coming down the staircase and just stopped, and he sat there, and he survived. I'm sure you've heard that story.
Mm-hmm.
Uh-huh.
And I'm guessing in the course of your career, you've heard all kinds of stories of the miraculous things happening at different fires. This one is just so huge and it marks this day in such a way that is, I guess, more than profound. But I'm guessing you've seen your share of those kind of things.
Yes, you always go by the saying there, but for the grace of God, go I. God knows what happens, where sometimes a roof in a building would come down and, it would miss somebody by just mere inches. If they got hit by it, they'd be gone.
What do you have anything? Are you attending any ceremonies today?
Unfortunately, I can't, Larry, due to my hip.
Okay.
Basically, I'm bed-bound.
Hip surgery.
Yeah.
When the huge impact settled in yourself, sir, and then you had to take a moment to just be by yourself, were there any services on site for people just to thank God or talk to God, within their own cells? Was there anything that happened throughout the course of the search and recovery?
We had chaplains. We had our own chaplain from our job that was, he was constantly coming into, especially our firehouse, because we lost the one person there, to reach out and, talk to anyone who wanted to talk. Unfortunately, the gentleman who passed away was very young. He was in his 20s. And a lot of his friends and buddies on the job were at the same age, so they were having trouble dealing with something, so horrific at such a young age.
Jimmy,
So our chaplain was, I would say, was very helpful at the time.
Jimmy, you were with the New York Board of Fire Underwriters, am I right, 30 years, 29?
New York Fire Patrol. That's the
New York Fire Patrol.
The formal name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was with them 27 years.
Okay. So that means you were there before the World Trade Center was built.
No. World Trade Center was built. I started June of 79 on the Fire Patrol.
Oh, okay.
I believe the Trade Center was built in early 70s.
All right, I'm doing my math wrong. Okay. I had heard stories that as it was being built, firefighters had to respond to that deep hole that was being built. There were sometimes fires down in the hole there.
Mm-hmm.
So,
when the Trade Center was being built, that I couldn't tell you.
Okay, yeah, I did my math wrong here. Our guest right now, if you're just tuning in, is James McCauley. He is with the New York Fire Patrol. You retired from that, right?
Well, the job closed in 2006.
Yeah, because of insurance nuts.
Yes.
Yeah.
And right now is the commissioner of the North Merrick Fire Department, and in both cases, both hats he had to wear that day of September 11th, 2001. And we've been talking to Jimmy, to Commissioner McCauley, I should say, about his recollections that day. And if you didn't hear earlier, lost a man on September 11th from his unit. Do you call it a unit? And then lost a nephew some years later due to complications from cancer that was directly associated with the attacks.
Because the museum is still under construction, have the curators of the museum reached out to all of the people that were involved, like yourself, and asked you to write something so they can have it right there in the museum, and when people are looking through it, that they can read your thoughts? Did you and your company do something like that?
Me personally, no, and I don't believe that, well, now, like I said, the job is closed, so there's really no one to reach out to. But I do know, I believe the family of Keith Roma has, they've asked for pictures, and I think they're going to have an area where there's going to be remembrance of their loved one. They've recorded some things, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
Going back to the collateral damage from the attacks on September 11th, 2001. It was chaotic enough as it was. I'm guessing you were getting calls from people in buildings that had maybe pieces of the airplane that hit the building. Are there stories that brings to mind when I talk about that?
Not that I know of, Larry. Not that I know of. I know parts of the plane were found, blocks, surrounding the Trade Center. Matter of fact, there was a part of the plane that was found as late as, I believe it was like 4 or 5 months ago.
I remember seeing that.
Small area on one of the streets in Lower Manhattan between two buildings.
I did see that photograph. That's just absolutely amazing that even happened. Yeah. Were the bodies of the people in the airplane found? The airplanes?
That I don't know, Larry.
How do you speak to grandchildren about this kind of an event? Because to them it happened way before they were born, and it's almost like World War II is to our generation. How do you talk to them so that no one will ever forget this day?
Well, the only thing you can say is you tell them to honor the heroes, and the heroes are the people that lost their lives that day, and tell them what it meant, to our country, and the reasons. Well, I don't know if we'll ever really know the real or the total reasons why this happened.
Yeah, right.
But it's just something that, like you say, comparing it to Pearl Harbor, it's something that this country should never forget.
Have you seen any of the movies that have been made about 9/11?
Yeah. Yes, I have.
What were your thoughts on those? What was the
only one I can really remember is Flight 93, I believe it was called. Where they were doing I guess from phone conversations that loved ones had with the people on the plane. They did the whole how the plane was hijacked, and I just, all I could think of watching that movie was how I can't see how the families could watch this, and just think of their loved ones and how it must be a torture or
Right, I know it is hard to understand. And when Robin and I had a guest whose parents had been in the Holocaust, could not watch Schindler's List.
Yeah.
Our father,
I can understand that.
Our fathers, our World War II vet fathers, could not watch World War II movies. My dad couldn't stand to watch World War II movies. So it's got to be along that same line. You voluntarily put yourself into harm's way when you chose to become a firefighter, and that was for the betterment of the people in your community. And it's the spirit that we all have to recognize, especially on this date, and stand up. And we were talking about the idea that the President Bush at the time, had declared today's date Patriot Day. And I can't think of, I mean, we were discussing whether it's patriotic or just simply, human goodness that makes a person want to walk into a building that's burning. But was there any way that you could have even guessed that it was going to fall down?
Larry, because of the bombings, I believe in '93, where the Trade Center didn't come down, I know it was the thinking. I know I had the same thought that. Now, I'm not a engineer. I didn't think the buildings would come down. You know, I mean, who could put together the formula of plane fuel and a force hitting a stationary object at a certain amount of speed and all of that?
Right.
That's way beyond my pay grade. But I can honestly tell you from the thinking that a bunch of us had was because it survived the bombing previously in the 90s, we thought the buildings would not come down.
Did you respond to that in 93?
I wasn't working that day, no. But my companies did respond that day, yes.
It is just so refreshing to have people like you, sir, that are so positive and so humble, and that you do remember everything that happened so you can help make the world a better place with your recounting of your feelings of that day and looking at the world the way it is today. You yourself are making sure that in your area of the world people are getting along and just accepting people for who they are.
Oh, thank you very much.
I can't tell you how many people, Jimmy, wrote to me. I think I said at the beginning, how many people wrote asking what the details were about this interview. They wanted to connect with you again. By the way, the phone line is open if you want to call. The WOCA number is 352-622-WOCA, 622-9622. We've got about 3 more minutes, actually. We want to make sure we ring the bell again 3 more times to commemorate, let's see, at 9:59, the South Tower of the World Trade Center collapsed, which was the first of the 2 towers to collapse. Well, Jimmy, as we wrap it up, thank you for taking some time today to talk to us. I hope to get back to New York. And Robin will be there in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
She knows where you live. She has seen your...
That's right.
Yeah, we went out there. Robin was telling, I think, off the air that I had a music gig.
Yeah.
And see, I feel so small compared. I'm the biggest guy in that picture of our class, right? But I'm so small compared to what he's done. You know. So anyway, I had a gig in Manhattan, and we had, it was a whirlwind thing. We went and had to come right back, but we did take a drive real quickly out to Long Island. And I showed her the old block.
Yeah, walk the streets. You even got to sit on the front steps
of
your house.
You know, it's having lived here my whole life. It upsets me now, especially when my children were younger. I can't even let them play on the block anymore because of the traffic is so busy. As opposed to when Larry and I grew up, we could literally play in the middle of the street. And,
you should have seen it the day Rob and I went. There was nothing. It was absolutely dead that day. I guess it was too early.
You did say it was early in the morning.
Yeah, it was very early.
I wanted to let you know, I don't know how this comes across, but I'm so proud of you, Jimmy. I'm so proud to say you're my friend. I'm so glad you're okay. It never, ever occurred to me, and I'm ashamed to say, never occurred to me that you could have been one of the casualties that day. Never occurred to me that the little boy that I heard say Uncle Jimmy was one of the casualties. And if there's any way I can salute you through the phone, Jimmy, you got it.
Thank you very much, Larry. Thank you. I appreciate it.
For those who missed this, it has been recorded. Hopefully the computer did what it was supposed to do. It will be up as a video slideshow, more or less, because Jimmy's not here. Mm-hmm. I do have your picture all over there. Hope you're not embarrassed by some of them. I have you at Shea Stadium, by the way.
Yeah.
Okay.
Everybody loves the Yankees around here.
No.
I know.
Go Mets.
I know. Everybody I grew up with loves the Mets. Jimmy being probably the head of that group. Jimmy, thank you so much. Take care of your hip, and I'll be up to see you soon.
Okay, Larry. Nice talking to you.
It'll be awesome.
It's been an honor, sir. Thank you so much.
We're gonna take.
Okay, Robin. Have a good day.
We're gonna do the tolling of the bells, and we'll be right back.
Ocala's information station, 1370 WOCA.
Ocala. ABC News Now. I'm Karen Chase. Bells are being rung, names being read aloud in New York, D.C., and Pennsylvania as Americans remember the 9/11 attack victims on today's 12th anniversary. President Obama visits the Pentagon Memorial. President Obama is willing to give diplomacy a chance. He's holding off on launching a military strike in Syria as he explores the possibility that a diplomatic proposal could remove the threat of chemical weapons without the use of force. An angry Ohio judge delayed a vehicular homicide arraignment until today for the man who confessed to a deadly drunk driving crash in a YouTube video. Critics have accused him of judge shopping to get leniency. He has said he'll plead guilty. Investors are giving less than stellar reviews to the two new faster and cheaper iPhones unveiled yesterday. Apple's stock is down, perhaps under the weight of disappointment. Just 105 days until Christmas. Kmart this week aired its first holiday commercial, its earliest ever kickoff to the season. The spot features a giant gingerbread man sneaking up on a woman in an office with the tagline, "Don't let the holidays sneak up on you." This is ABC News.